Welcome to The Language Lens, an education podcast brought to you by Penn and Education in partnership with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Hosted by me, Dr. Andrea Kolb, and Bob Meisel, Title III Director and Bilingual Education Advisor at the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Welcome back to Language Lens. We're really excited to be here again today, and we're joined by two of our awesome colleagues from Pennsylvania. Today we're going to be zooming in to talk about collaboration. And collaboration is a really important topic because all of us as educators share responsibility for our English learners in schools. I think sometimes we might have assumptions that the English learners largely are the responsibility of ESL specialists, but really we're here to talk about today why that collaboration across teachers and administrators is so centrally important to English learners' overall success.
Yeah, that's right, Andrea. The state policy explicitly states that the responsibility for taking affirmative steps to overcome language barriers, to use the legal language of the federal government, is everyone's. So that means that content teachers, paraprofessionals, ESL teachers are all responsible for taking those steps, for making the accommodations and supporting English learners in both learning English and learning the content that they're supposed to learn, math, science, and social studies, and so on. So inherent in that is this need for the different specialists to collaborate, because obviously ESL teachers are specialists in language, content teachers are specialists in the content that they're teaching, but both of those things have to happen in a classroom. So it's inherent, like I said, that ESL teachers and content teachers collaborate to make sure that they're both providing that support as effectively as they can, which brings us to the topic for today, talking about collaboration in a school district.
Which is perfect because we always appreciate Bob being with us to talk about that policy standpoint from the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Bob's vast experience across state departments here in the United States. But we really want to zoom in now to what does this look like in a classroom, in a school, like on the ground. And so joining us today, we have Liz and Miguel from the School District of Lancaster. Why don't you go ahead and say hello and introduce yourselves?
I'm Liz Krekel. I'm the elementary ELD instructional coach for the School District of Lancaster. This is my third year coaching, and I've been working in the district for 15 years.
Nice. Great. So lots of experience.
And my name is Miguel Antunes. I'm the secondary ELD instructional coach for School District of Lancaster. This is my fourth year almost as a coach, and this is my seventh year working in School District of Lancaster.
That's great. So we have a wealth of knowledge and experience here at the table, and I'm sure you've seen lots of things and lots of changes, both in our demographics and our administration and colleagues. So one thing we know about education is it's always changing. And so you've lived through lots of those changes and can bring all of that knowledge and experience with us today. So thanks for being here. The first question I have, really kind of what Bob was talking about, that I think to me sounds like it might be one of the harder pieces, is collaborating with those classroom teachers, the content teachers, who might not have the same kinds of preparation or training in working with English learners as, of course, the ESL specialist does in their specialist programming. So can you talk us through what is it like to collaborate with those classroom teachers? What makes it work? What are some things you've learned along the way?
Well, I was a classroom teacher for 6 years, so I think I had that lens of like what it's like to work with classroom teachers and the needs that they have. So I like to approach it like in my classroom teacher lens of like what are they experiencing, what needs do they have? Because when you're a classroom teacher, you have students with all different needs. You could have special ed students, you could have ELD students, you could have students of multiple needs within your classroom. So I try to approach that lens and saying like, how can I connect with them and help them with their needs? And I work closely with our elementary coaches with math and ELA, so we can have supports within our curriculum guides. So elementary teachers can just go to curriculum guides, grab the resources that they need. And I try to make it easier for them, and that's what I tell them as a coach. My job is to make things easier for them, and I think I've gained respect from them by just trying to help them and support them and make their jobs easier. And I think when they see that I'm there to support them and help them, they're willing to work together to support their ELD students in the classroom.
I want to lift up one of the things you said, because I think that's a big takeaway piece out of this, is you mentioned building in resources right into their curriculum guide so that they don't have to necessarily email you or come meet with you, that when they pick up their ELA, I think you said ELA, yeah. They pick up their ELA curriculum and there's already some considerations in there for English learners mapped right onto the content that they're going to teach. So I bet that took some time, but It sounds like a really worthwhile investment.
It definitely is, and I love when I go out to buildings and I like see the resources I've made, they're being used, the posters I made are in classrooms. So it does like make me happy that like they actually are using these resources And I think what we can do is work together to make their jobs easier, and the ELD teachers can support the classroom teachers as well. It's a collaboration effort, and I think if we can help each other out with our different strengths, it definitely helps.
Absolutely. Yeah. Miguel, what are you thinking about?
Well, I'm thinking about just coming into this position and becoming a coach. And when you're a coach from the district, I had previously only worked at the high school, which was McCaskey High School. And so now I'm responsible for going to lots of other venues and places that I'd not been before. So just the notion of like trying to build trust with people and establishing like relationships with the staff. So initially that was with ESL staff members or ELD staff members in these various buildings, so that they can see that I'm trying to come in to offer support. And then once I was able to establish those kinds of relationships and build the trust with them, then from there it started to expand outward into different core classrooms and working with core teachers, then being able to be a part of PLC conversations with core teachers at different grade levels and being able to participate in those different conversations. And then similar to Liz, then also working with different instructional coaches, not only at the building level, but also across the district. So working with ELA at the secondary level, collaborating with like our STEM coaches at the secondary level to similarly like create some different resources and have options available that those teachers can utilize. So I think being visible, being present in those spaces has been important, because now I might just walk into a building and easily someone will pull me aside and say, oh, hey, Miguel, I have a question about X. Can you like give me a moment about this or what have you? Or like, I'd like to talk to you in the future about this other situation or scenario. So it just lends itself to being now to have more conversations developing just from being present initially. Yeah.
And it seems to me, too, I want to lift up two things that came to my mind as you were talking that I think are important, right, takeaways from this. One is being ESL instructional coaches allows you to be very visible. That was a point you made of like, I'm in buildings and I'm available for teachers to ask questions, or, hey, I'm thinking about something, or I'm trying to pull out this particular language piece. Can you help me? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that's important to me, because I think sometimes without folks like you, the ESL specialists have their whole full caseload and they're teaching all day. And so ESL specialists and teachers might not ever see each other. And so having a role like an instructional coach in ESL allows you to be in those buildings and available. The second thing I was thinking about was around high school, right, secondary in particular. When we look at secondary teachers, we often have folks who are specialized in a discipline. And they don't spend all day long with the same students. So they're with students for a short period of time and really specialized experts in, say, history, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I think you said, too, that I think is really promising is having you work with the instructional coaches in the disciplines that could also then help teachers lift out what is the language of this discipline? What are the language practices of historians or biologists or chemists? And that might not be something that our disciplinary teachers have spent a lot of time thinking much about. And so now they have support from you and their content teacher or their content coaches as well. So those are two, I think, really good promising practices from what you've said.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you mentioned that you had to start off with building relationships.
Yeah.
It's so important when you're collaborating, you're working with other teachers, and so you have to have a trusting relationship, and you've got to start there. And lots of folks who we talk to about collaboration say, yeah, that's a really important first step, is just building the trust and getting to know each other, making sure that you understand your roles, and then everything else comes so much easier. So we talked a little bit about you working with classroom teachers and other teachers and staff, for kids. But what about collaboration with administration, the different buildings that you're in? What does that look like?
I think a lot with what Miguel said about building the relationships. So he and I both go out to buildings a lot. So not only are we talking with the classroom teachers, we're also talking with administrators. So when we're there, maybe stopping by the principal's office and just checking in like, hey, we're in the building today. And so just letting them know that we're there to support, so we can talk to them, their building coaches, about doing PLCs or professional development. So it's another thing of just building those relationships with the admin and being visible in their buildings, that they see we're there to support them. We're not just sitting in district offices. We're in their buildings supporting their teachers, and we're on the ground helping out.
Yeah, and I think it lends itself then to that becoming almost like an expectation in terms of like instructional practice in their building. Like we're not just coming out for like a special like one-time annual PD on X day, to address all the things that are required, because you can't talk about all these things in 45 minutes or whatever minimal time is typically given in those PD sessions. you walk into a building and you see an assistant principal that you've typically worked with, or you see the principal you typically work with, and they say hello to you, and you're able to just chat quickly. But it just I think also triggers for them this person is continuously here, so they're continuously looking to work with not only our ELD specialists, but also to see what's happening in these different core classrooms and the work for the student. So hopefully for them, it's just a reminder, not only in the back of their mind, but hopefully forefront that as an administrator, I am also responsible for ensuring that this instruction gets done every single day for these kids. It's not just the the checkbox kind of compliance that can happen in some instances for sure. So and quite a number of the administrators, I think, are very active and reach out to our department and look for support. And some are already reaching out to us now to make plans for next school year to try to get things on the calendar and set up opportunities for us to come in and be present to work with their teachers and with their ELD staff. So that's just been what we've been building toward over the last couple of years.
And how many administrators do you work with, like Miguel and Liz?
Go ahead, Liz. I guess
so I support 13 different elementary schools. Wow. So the 13 principals, and then some of them have assistant principals, and then they're not administrators, but there's also building instructional coaches. And I think Miguel and I have done a really good job collaborating with them. So once or twice a month, we have instructional coach meetings. So we do a good job building relationships with the coaches and be hey, can we do to support you in your professional development for ELD students? So there's a lot of people, but we've been really trying over our course of 3 or 4 years being coaches to really build those relationships up with the building admin.
Yeah, we have 24 school sites across the district, so I have roughly 9 that I support as well. We overlap with a couple sites, we have a K through 8 school, and a couple of different unique kind of educational scenarios. We have a cyber program. We have alternative school placements as well too for different students with different needs. So we get into all those different places. So so I support the high school, I support middle schools, and a lot of these alternative programs for secondary as well. So same thing. Just try to go into all those places with the kind of same mindset.
2 things that stood out to me about what you're saying here is professional development and professional learning, not as sort of the one day a year or 45 minutes that you mentioned, Miguel, but this ongoing sort of sustained professional learning that I think teachers really want. But time, of course, is always our most limited resource. But so I think to your point, one, of recognizing that all teachers need continued professional learning, sustained professional learning to work with English learners in whatever capacity they do it, whether they're a reading specialist or a content teacher or an ESL specialist. But then also I feel you have because of the relationships you've built and the work that you have a good sense of what teachers are asking for or what kind of training they really need so that we can map onto the PD offering something they actually want, right? So that they're invested a little bit more instead of, choosing out of a hat. Sometimes it feels and here's the PD for the day, and you've got folks in the room that's not really what I needed. So having that, that say in the communication with administrators who largely, I would imagine, select what the professional development is going to look like is a really important part of the collaboration.
So,
I was thinking.
Yeah. So we talk about, what I'm curious about now, and I think a lot of people would be, is what is the collaboration like? Walk us through an actual collaboration. What does it look like when you're in a classroom working with a teacher? What's a typical kind of interaction? What things you talk about? What does it actually look like? Because I think we talk about collaboration all the time, but I think we sort of stop talking about it at the point the door closes, and then everyone's kind of well, what are we supposed to do? Mm-hmm. So yeah, can you give us a little insight on what it actually looks like when you're actually working with a teacher?
Sure. Shall I go ahead first? Yeah. All right. First thinking about working with some of our ELD teachers, I just like to spend time in their classroom first to begin with. I feel that's how I got started. I just wanted to see what was happening, just even in our first kind of sheltered instructional spaces. And I saw that there were a lot of really great things happening. So, excellent scaffolding, really good differentiated kind of resources and strategies that people were using to really support their students who, of course, obviously we understand, not all students are developing their language in the same way and on the same kind of growth continuum or what have you. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of variation in what they did. And I just thought, okay, so this is excellent. And so how can we see this now present in other spaces? And so from speaking to those teachers, some of them push into other classrooms. And then that's how I kind of like use that as an entry point to get into those other classrooms. So then I would go into a math space that an ELD teacher would be pushing into, got to know that math teacher. And then so for me later on, when I got into that math classroom, just on my own, it wasn't a question, right? So just to, again, back to the whole trust thing, it like eliminated any kind of awkward, like, oh, you're coming from the district and are you observing me? Is this official? Should I be terrified now or something? Right? Just to get all that out of the way. And so that collaboration comes down to sometimes I'll just walk in, observe. Sometimes I'll speak to some of the students, kind of see what they're doing, what they're working on. I'll look at the material sometimes that a teacher would have like developed for them. I see a lot of intention in what teachers are trying to do. And so I think the intervention part is more that, say, said math teacher and ELD specialist, they might be in the same classroom for the same time every day during seventh period, but they don't have any, let's say, like common prep time in order to be able to meet. So their collaboration is like, passing in the hallway or like email conversation or something like that, which we know is obviously a lot less effective than having time to actually prep and plan together. So I'll try to step into those different, let's say, like spaces as much as possible to look at some of the things that the math teacher might be doing with suggestions from the ELD teacher, and then offer like additional insight on that. Like, oh, hey, this document that you created with this graphic organizer is really great, but if you maybe could think about adding like this other piece to it, that would make it that much better for, let's say, like these newcomer students who are really struggling with this one particular aspect of the language for this, or to maybe like minimize the way it looks in a certain way, because you don't always have to give quote unquote like the same amount of material for it to still be like rigorous for students who are at a lower language proficiency, and just doing conversations and looking at things like that.
Yeah, and would that happen typically before class, or do you kind of talk to them after class or between class, or like just what's the logistics?
Usually if I had the opportunity to kind of observe and see those kind of things, it would be like, might be just like after class, like, just even like a brief conversation and say like, I have a resource that's like something similar that I can like share with you that maybe you look at, and then you can kind of like riff off of that and create your own thing, your own version of something that works best for you. Other instances, it's led to, conversations and teachers asking me to like come in and like meet with them during their prep period, which of course is like preferable because we can actually have time to like really sit and talk. But I understand, teachers' time is the most valuable thing, and they don't always necessarily have that to give. But we try to, I've had a little bit of success in being able to do that, I feel. So,
What I really like about this is it sets you up to be a bridge, essentially, right? So you're saying if those two teachers collaborate but they don't have common time together, you can see them and what they're doing and while they're delivering in real time, and then you get to talk with each one of them about maybe something the other one would have said to each other had they shared some space to plan, but you can bridge that space for them by working in both of their planning periods.
Yeah, trying to as much as possible, but I mean, that's a lot of teachers obviously to like touch base with,
sure.
But so in some successes for sure. Other areas I wish I could do a lot more, but I also realize, the time is limited. But that's where we try to get in, for sure.
I think in elementary, because I have 13 buildings, it's a lot of teachers. I think the ELD teachers are kind of my way into the classroom. So I built relationships with them first. And then they're like, hey, this first grade teacher has a lot of multilingual learners in their classroom right now. Maybe you should connect. So then they've helped build those bridges with me and the classroom teachers, especially ones that maybe are a newer teacher or a teacher who's been working for 20 years. And this is first year they have brand new SLIFE students in 5th grade and they need that support. So I feel like the classroom teachers have built that bridge. And it's a lot of just conversations then with the classroom teachers. And I'm a familiar face already because I've been there for professional development. I've been in the building, and then just sitting and having a good conversation with the teachers about the students and their needs. And it's more being a thinking partner. It's not that I'm the expert and know everything and the teacher doesn't know anything. They've all been teaching. You have to honor that. We all have the expertise. We all have degrees. A lot of us have master's degrees. It's not that they don't know things. They might just need a different perspective and a partner to think with and talk things through with. And I think that's really important to remember when collaborating, is realizing we're all experts, but maybe we just have different different things to share and bring to the table.
Or like you said, looking at the same thing through the lens of multilingual learners, you see something different, or you see something that you hadn't seen before.
Exactly.
I think that's a great point. So are there any tools that you use that help collaborate? Especially, I know, Miguel, you said when people can't share common planning, that's something we hear often. And so email exchanges, or hallway passing conversations, sure. Are there any other tools that you have found that could be useful to bridge spaces when people can't sit together?
I guess it's just, in some instances, it's, advocating for that space and time is one thing, that we've very much tried to do. Some of those conversations have been successful to create a few opportunities, at least for a little bit of overlap for teachers so that they can plan together, and other conversations have not been successful. And it just is no, this is the schedule and that's it. And so, we live with that and we try to work around those parameters. Yeah. But I think some of it has just been through, a lot of new technology, things that have developed over the recent years. A couple years ago, I reached out to ELD teachers, for instance, to ask about ideas regarding different books and resources that they use to kind of, in a way, gather all this information from people that were sharing in different buildings that didn't necessarily get a chance to meet with each other. Yeah. Created surveys of that information, and then tried to, basically create a flow chart, put that information back out there for the teachers to observe and look at. I used a program called Miro in order to do that, which is this awesome whiteboard software that's really great. I think that was helpful to present more of a macro picture of what this looked like for people across different places, and to kind of put their survey data out there and what their let's say kind of interests were in terms of things that they were looking at. Yeah. And then recently been also helping people in looking at how different AI technologies can be potentially helpful and supportive for them as well too, if they don't necessarily have that time to plan. So, ELD teacher suggests something after, pushing into your science classroom about X, Y, or Z that you could do with a different kind of a scaffold, or, using a different kind of rubric. And you don't necessarily have a lot of experience or time to be able to sit there and think about that. So, leveraging the different platforms that are available now, whether that's Diffit, Magic School, obviously ChatGPT, Claude, whichever thing you want to use, to find a way to how can I rework something and look at it and then see if this could work for my students. So I think those things have been an interesting and intriguing new lens of support recently.
Something you said in the beginning of that stood out to me, of also working from the same materials. A lot of times we see the core teachers have a set of core resources, the ESL specialist has a set of supplemental resources, and they're not anything similar to each other. And so it almost feels like you're trying to collaborate using completely different sets of materials, text, and things. So I like what you said about finding out first, what is everybody using? And we can target language development with the same kinds of materials, maybe even the same materials, but we are using them for a different purpose. And then running them through tools like Diffit, for example, right, can pull out, if I was using this same text, how could I target this aspect of language? And then an ESL specialist has the materials they need to target for targeted support, and then the content teacher's using that. And then the student sees the same text for two different purposes, and it creates a sort of continuity for their learning as well. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I just remember, as a teacher, I also taught social studies to begin my career, and was doing that with newcomer students. And, I was expected to do a lot of, quote unquote, core materials or what have you, teaching about things that for the vast majority of my students were things that they had never learned before and had no experience with. Right. And this was when I was still teaching in New York. And I just remember having sometimes 2, 3, 4 versions of the quote unquote same material present in class in terms of differentiation. And of course, this was before all these tools were developed. So I would spend hours redoing all these documents to make that available for kids. And so I understand the extent to which that is a lot of work, a lot of time. Yep. But I knew that that's what was required in order for students to be successful. And so I think it's kind of between, where is there autonomy for teachers to be able to make some of those, instructional decisions of what works best for their students, but then also, thinking about, okay, we have to teach to these standards, and how can I best do that, within this realm,
And I feel like at the elementary, I noticed so many teachers are doing great things in their buildings, so I try to help them collaborate with one another. So there's ELD teachers in one building doing something great and another building doing something great, and ways for them to share. So I actually created a Google Drive so they can share material. So if someone was doing a great thing with the fourth grade novel, they can pull it from another building that was doing it. So our teachers are really willing to share, and I think just giving them space to be willing to share materials. And this summer, we're going to take some time to actually create more materials and share together. So I think it's just important to bring teachers together. Since we have so many ELD teachers and so many are doing great things, when I go out to buildings, I'm like, we can share with one another and help each other out and make each other better as well.
And there's another strategy. It might not be a favorite among a lot of educators, but the time that we do have some time where we're not running from class to class or subject to subject is the summer. And so you mentioning, taking some time in the summer to build up those resources, because I do think, as a teacher, that's really hard to do in the middle of the school year while you're teaching and adapting to, students' needs, to actually create core resources or supplemental resources. So summer might give us some time to choose those, really big ticket topics or texts that we know students are going to grapple with for a good period of time, and start with those, right? So prioritize the big ones, spend some time over the summer creating those sets, like you said, that then you've got more in the toolbox, right? The proverbial teacher toolbox when they walk into a classroom, that I don't have to spend till 2 a.m. creating 3 different versions of this text or, modifying the linguistic demand of it. I've got some stuff that I can pull from and work with.
And it's been really helpful. Like, we've gotten some new teachers that started mid-year, and that's a big stressful thing. Starting mid-year, you're like, okay, I'm trying to figure all this out. And I'm like, oh, here's some resources we already have. Like, you just see the sense of relief. Like, oh, I have things I can already use. And like, they're like, remember that thing you showed me? It's like really helping me. So I think it's great to support our new teachers as well. So we have our expert teachers really helping our new teachers, which is great.
That's great. Well, I think this brings us close to the end. Does anyone have final thoughts? Anything you want to add?
Well, we really appreciate you sharing, a little time with us to talk about what you're doing to help foster collaboration and collaborating with teachers and administrators. It's such an important thing. Like I started off at the beginning saying, it's part of state policy. It's inherent in the state policy for how we support ELs in Pennsylvania. And collaboration is just such an important component of that. And so I think that, your insights and your experience on this is really valuable. And we appreciate you sharing some time with us to talk about it.
Yeah, I'll echo Bob, Liz, Miguel. Thank you so much for being with us today. And to our listeners, viewers out there, we hope you came away with something new, a new idea, a new strategy to take up, or maybe just a new passion for collaboration to dig back in at your local schools. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you back here next time on Language Lens.